Okay, this is a video response to Objectively Awesome and his comments basically on my supposed anger. As I already responded in his comments, yeah, I agree. I do have an anger problem, and but the part that I do disagree with is the notion that I um, somehow praise anger or think anger is ought to be cultivated or useful. I don't agree with that at all. And just wanted to do a video to show my anger towards anger. It's a big problem. So starting point, a point of reference is there's a great book by Shantideva, I think 600 AD, Buddhist monk called The Way of the Bodhisattva. And there's a chapter 6 on there called Patience, and it's excellent. And actually, at the public library, I found not a copy of that, but a copy of a commentary on the book by I think a Tibetan monk, very good, called The Nectar of Madhusri's Speech. I'll leave that in the description. For the sake of this video, I'll just call this The Nectar book. So, according to Shantideva, and I believe that the antidote to anger is patience or forbearance. So that's what I'd like to talk about more rather than just anger. How do we deal with anger? So we're assuming that we do agree that anger is a problem. And I was thinking about anger and how Western culture interacts with, or rather patience and how Western culture interacts with that. And patience is not only not appreciated, but it's also actively denigrated. People do not like patience, and our culture is just socializing us to be impatient. There's instant coffee, there's fast food, the slogan's no time to wait. Everyone talks about beating traffic and faster download speeds, and nobody wants to wait for anything. And it's just, even being patient is seen as kind of like silly. So people say, there's that phrase, patience is a virtue, but I think the reason that is such a phrase is because people don't believe it. So they kind of have to remind themselves, because there's a lot of other virtues you don't say this is a virtue. Like, yeah, obviously honesty is a virtue, but nobody says that. But they do say patience is a virtue. So I think even that statement is telling. So due disclosure, I am impatient and an angry person, as Objectively Awesome pointed out. So this isn't me trying to be the most patient person in the world or whatever, but just talking about my own practice and why I do value patience, and I would like to be a more patient person. So first of all, impatient people seem to give off a negative energy. There's, tapping of the hands and just this nervous, goofy energy that impatient people have. And I guess a lot of us don't even realize it, but if you've ever seen a truly patient person, it's relaxing. It's just relaxing to be in the presence of a truly patient person. And for my social life alone, for the benefit of the others around me, I think it would be great if I were a more patient person. And also, I think patient people are happier, obviously. Um, According to the Nectar, patience is a supreme transcendence of sorrow. So it's a way away. It's one of the paths. It's not the only path away from sorrow. And then the way the Bodhisattva talks a lot about how anger destroys virtue. So you can do so many virtuous things, be such a great person, and then you have one moment of anger and it's all gone. And especially, again, how people think of you. Angry people people don't want to be around them. They're just not. Nobody wants to be around someone who's unhappy. And anger is, despite what people think, that person is unhappy. And they're not strong. They're not in control. So I think literally patience can transform your subjective hell into a heaven. And the greatest thing about patience is everything in the world becomes useful for your practice. There's nothing that can't help you practice. All your problems actually become assets at that point. All your enemies become gurus. because you just think, instead of thinking about, oh, I don't want this person, I don't like this person, you start to think about, how can this person teach me patience? And the whole concept of, if you're around nice people all the time, then it's kind of hard to even claim that you are a good patient person, because you haven't been tested. Only when you test yourself. I'm not saying you should hang out with angry, impatient people. There's enough of them in the world, I think. I think you need to cultivate that. But if you do run into them, and you will, obviously we all do, when we do run into these terrible people, instead of seeing them as a terrible person, like I just said, we should see them as somebody who has their own problems, their own, they're going through anger probably, or whatever, and they're suffering, they're impatient, and they're in pain, and we can have compassion for them. But most of all, we can be practicing our patience. So see, the whole concept of patience can just flip everything around and bring so many things in the world to your own benefit, just by changing the way you look at it. And I'm not saying it's easy. I've had a terrible boss. I've had so many problems with him. So I've had a lot of terrible bosses, lots of issues, and I get very angry, and I do not respond well. Subjectively awesome, wisely deduced about me. But I do value patience, and I would like to work on it, and I do work on it. So, then there's the whole sitting in traffic exercise, which I do. When I'm in traffic, I try to send loving kindness to all the motorists around me. There's that, and that also will build patience. You're using, these other people in traffic who are obstructing you as, again, a means of practice, the road to liberation. Patient people are process-oriented. They focus on the present rather than the future reward. So they're already kind of rewarded no matter what they're doing. Your activities, getting from A to B, like cooking, you don't think about eating the meal. You just, the process of cooking, that's its own reward. Or when I'm doing my job, rather than the completion of the job, it's every step of the job can be its own reward. If you are a patient person and you look at things in a wise manner. So Stoicism is another thing that seems to be another belief system like Buddhism that teaches patience. So that's I think it's interesting that there's some things that are similar with Stoicism and Buddhism, and some things that are different. And I think absolutely patience is a virtue that Stoics excel at, and it ought to be. It's even more. I like Stoicism, not a Stoic, but I like Stoicism, and I think that's another reason one should be patient, or another word in that direction. So yeah, being patient is important. Being angry is not good, not ought to be cultivated. But what I meant to say, just to defend myself a little bit, is I didn't mean to say that anger is good. I meant that when you are angry, you shouldn't be angry at your anger, because then, Thich Nhat Hanh talked about how when you're angry, you are your anger. So if you hate that anger, you hate yourself. I'm saying that in the moment of anger, you ought to be patient with yourself, because I know a lot of Buddhists who think they should already be enlightened. I don't know, some weird arrogant thing they have that people are annoying them, and at what point will I stop being annoyed? And I'm thinking, you're impatient about gaining your patient practice. So you even need to be patient with that. You need to be patient with yourself. You need to be loving with yourself. And that's what I was trying to say, is that I'm trying not to lose my mind when I lose my mind. I've already gotten angry. Something that you really can't control. So at that point, you need to take some breaths and work with it, and just see that also as part of your practice.